I made it very clear to the 911 medics that I was a DNR. Do not resuscitate. My daughter came in, instructed them or commanded them to resuscitate me. I went through 4 specific phases of an experience. I start to feel emotions and memories that I had throughout my life. I would feel the emotion that I had when I was sitting on my grandmother's lap and she was washing my face before I went off to school. I felt the emotion of a friend of mine coming up to me and hitting me in the side with his elbow and joking. I couldn't identify any of the individuals that were doing this, but I felt that they were a consciousness somewhere about me. In other words, the consciousness was cohesive. Hi, I'm Wayne Cesaro, and I had an NDE. How did it come about that I had an NDE? I was out working in the field, cutting up a bunch of lumber and a bunch of logs for firewood, and I had a bit of a cold. I babysat my grandkids, and 4 or 5 days later, got a cold. I'm in pretty good shape. I'm a personal trainer. I keep in good health, and I didn't really worry too much about it. So I'm out doing that work, bending up and down all over the place. The logs are heavy, and I start to get a little problem with breathing. It's difficult, and I more or less, after a while, had to leave my work and go back up to the house because I really had a problem with breathing. To give you an idea of why I had a problem with breathing, when this was all over and done with, it turns out that I had RSV, I had the flu, and I had pneumonia. And here I was just thinking I have a cold. So I get up into the yard, and by then I got hit by a Mack truck and ended up on my knees. I tried to get up off my knees, and I ended up flat on my face. Luckily, I have my phone with me. I called 911, and they sent some medics over. I live in a rural area, so it took a while for the medics to get to me, probably 10, 15 minutes. In the meantime, I'm struggling trying to breathe. And I asked the 911 attendant, who remained on the phone with me, to call my daughter and ask her to come and get to the house, take care of the animals, horses and dogs, and then come on up to the hospital. You can come pick me up, I figured, right? All right, well, the medics, when they did finally get there, they loaded me into the truck and they took me to the hospital, where I was in the emergency room. Now, I don't remember too much from what was going on, and most of what I found out was from interviews after the fact. But it turns out that I coded. The reason why I coded, they said, was because the stress of trying to breathe and the work that I did trying to get up to the house and breathing was enough to give me a heart attack. So aside from respiratory failure, I had a heart attack. Could have knocked me over with a feather. I didn't even know a thing about it. My daughter came in to the emergency room. She didn't go to the house first to take care of the horses and the dogs. She came right up to the emergency room. And when she came in, there was a bit of an argument, they tell me, because I made it very clear to the 911 medics that I was a DNR. Do not resuscitate. My daughter came in, instructed them or commanded them to resuscitate me. She mentioned that she was the personal representative and my power of attorney, and her command was to resuscitate me. So they did. I was out for about 2.5 minutes. Perhaps a little bit less. They didn't keep a good record because there was an awful lot of discussions and arguments going on when she came walking in the room right at the time the alarm was going off. So what happened in the meantime? Where was I? I went through 4 specific phases of an experience. but the phases were not sequential. It wasn't 1, 2, 3, 4. They were all 4 phases going on at the same time. But I'll give it to you in English or in humanistic terms that we can understand. But I don't think that there's any the words that I could use to really describe what was going on. But first, I do a lot of meditation, and I did some work in the spiritualist community and the spiritual communities. I was a pastor, I ran a spiritual center, and I taught a lot of classes. So I'm very familiar with meditation and out-of-body experiences. The first thing I realized was I was having an out-of-body experience, but I did not prepare for an out-of-body experience. It's just that I wasn't in my body. And the funny thing about it is I heard silence. Now, why that's a funny thing? I have tinnitus. My ears ring all the time. It sounds like a tropical rainforest going on in my head every minute of the day. But poof, I had silence. I didn't hear that noise, and I knew I was leaving my body. I couldn't understand that. So what I then felt was more or less like I'm inside of a cloud. It's all nice and white. It's not too bright. And the light around me and the cloud around me seems to have had a consciousness to it and gave me a very compassionate command. And that command was, be at peace. So I stayed at peace. During this first phase, I was let's say I'm laying down on the bed in peace in the middle of this cloud, relaxing, and I start to feel emotions and memories that I had throughout my life. I would feel the emotion that I had when I was sitting on my grandmother's lap and she was washing my face before I went off to school. I felt the emotion of a friend of mine coming up to me and hitting me in the side with his elbow and joking. I couldn't identify any of the individuals that were doing this, but I felt that they were a consciousness somewhere about me. In other words, the consciousness was cohesive. It had a originating point. And then and these were a series of emotions and feelings. The feeling I had when I was on my sailboat, sailing out with a good wind, that exhilarating feeling that I would get on the sailboat. That's the feeling I had. So the first phase was a bunch of feelings that I had that were all related to my life. After a while, the second phase came in. That was more or less of a spectacular kind of a thing. I was led from the table or from the cloud into another area where there were many, many, many beings. And they were of a they were celebrating. Then I was more or less feeling as if I was sitting at the end of a hall on a dais, and these people were then presented to me. So, for example, my wife passed away a few years ago. My wife was announced and presented. And then during that time, that presentation, my life with her went through every aspect, once again, of memory. It's more or less like I lived the same life over again in perfect memory, except that life, instead of the 36 years that we were married, lasted a fraction of an instant. So in that regards, then people were then presented to me, announced. And the people that were announced to me was everyone that I ever met. And a lot of people that I never met, that I did not meet, but they had something in common with me, or they were affected by my transit, by my life. They were affected in some way. Now, and the way that we communicated, how we communicated, it was just complete acceptance from one another. We were sharing a lovely moment. Even for those people who were my tormentors when I was younger, it wasn't a matter of coming in and saying, oh, I did this to you, I did that, and you did this other thing, and I'm sorry, and let's make amends. It wasn't anything like that. It was simply a meeting of minds of people who were in synchronization, who were in the same frame of mind, the same thinking, and just happy and together. We were once again. The feeling was of a hugging, of bringing them close into my heart, and that we were one. We were one. We were beyond any issues. We didn't have to explain ourselves. We understood ourselves, and we loved each other. Um, that went on through for what felt like a considerable amount of time, as there were many, many, many. I can't tell you exactly who they were, but I remember thinking when it was all over, that there was everyone I ever knew and a lot of people I didn't know. And that was a very nice experience. What was very nice about the experience was the amount of love and the togetherness that we had. That lasted for a while, and then the next phase came in. And remember, all these phases are happening all at once. It felt as if I was being plugged into a network. I had a job, I had work to do, and I was involved in doing my work. Now, what was the work? It's hard to say. I identify with an archangel called Raphael, who has a certain characteristic about him. And I felt his presence there, and the work I was doing had something to do with his mission. So I was helping. I was helping relay commands or information from the brain to the body and the organs. So in a way, I felt like I was a cell on a spinal cord. I was involved in the work that I was doing. I was involved in the work that others were doing, and I was an active piece of the whole. That lasted for a while, and I got a good sense of what it was I was doing as far as what my job was. That went into the next phase, and the next phase was then basically looking at the earth and realizing that I was heading back. What I felt was perspiration on my brow. And as soon as I felt the perspiration on my brow, everything stopped. Everything stopped, and I was pulled out of it. So in other words, I'm sitting there working with a bunch of, heavenly celestial beings. I'm doing my job. This is the normal job that I have. And next thing I know, I'm pulled from it as if a vacuum cleaner is, pulling the dust off the floor. And all I see is my Uncle Ralph. Now, my Uncle Ralph died about 10 years ago now, and he was my favorite uncle. And all I could see was his face. And I was like, what's going on here? I remember saying, Ralph, how can I see you? You're dead. I can't see you. I remember thinking that. And then he just gave me one little message, and it was, don't be a chooch. Tell your story. Okay. His face changed into someone else's face, and he was yelling at me, something to the effect of, don't worry about it, Mr. Cesaro, we got you. You're okay now. You're okay. You're going to be all right. All right. Next thing I know, I hear the word sedative, and that's when they sedated me, and they put a tube inside my throat to help me breathe for the next 3 days. So for the next 3 days, I was intubated, sedated. I was given injections of steroids to heal the wound, heal the lungs. And I stayed in an ICU for about a week. I come out of the ICU and I did a little rehab for a month, and then I'm back to normal. And during and immediately after that experience, I remember when I was waking up, when they took the tube out and they stopped the sedation, my daughter was sitting next to me. All I was saying was, what happened? What happened? What was that? And she figured, oh, what happened? Well, you were cutting logs and, you had a problem and you came up and you called 911 and okay, I got that, but I wasn't asking about what happened there. I was asking about what happened in between that time. Never, she couldn't give me an answer, of course, but it took me about a month of recuperating to sit and think about what was going on and what I experienced for me to be able to put it into terms that are relatable. Um, so that was about it from that experience. Now, what it did, all right, or how I reacted afterwards. Well, a couple of things. Ralph said, tell the story. So, as a spiritualist pastor and a teacher of metaphysics, meditation, circles and seances and all that stuff, I had many, many notes. I had notes from my lectures, from my classes. I took classes and I'd write my notes. And a lot of these notes I put into stories, short stories, because I've been writing for 20 years, 30 years. I compiled all of that and I put it into a book. So as far as the activity of what happened afterwards, the activity was, okay, I'm going to write a book and I'm going to put my experience out there. And the book is about, yes, it goes into great detail as to this experience, the NDE experience, but it also brings up all the other things that I experienced throughout my life and, working with the metaphysical aspects of life. The other part that didn't really have anything to do with some task was where am I after the experience? What am I left with? How do I feel? And I got to tell you how I feel is I don't understand what, I don't have a death wish. I'm not suicidal, but I liked it where I was so much. And I have a very good life here and now. I live in a great place. I have family. I have some friends. But you know what? I would give it all up to go back to where I was. It's as simple as that. And the biggest question I have after that is, why? Why am I still here? Okay, right. I'm here because my daughter said, resuscitate him. All right, got it. She says, it was no problem. If you wanted to die, you would have died. If you didn't want to die, I was giving you a chance. And if you came out of it with brain damage, I'll take care of you. Okay, so I'll go with her. I'll go with that. I respect her decisions. She was raised right, and she's a very strong-minded woman. And good, I'm glad she did that. And it's nice to be hanging around and playing with grandkids and my little dog and all this stuff and going on hikes and all these things. But I'm telling you, I would give it all up. So whenever the day comes that I'm ready to go, I have an idea of what's going to be going on and where I'm going to be, and I don't have a problem with it. I do not fear it. There's nothing to fear.